Okay, great. Thank you.
John, I'm up to speed.
Okay. How are you feeling?
No, I'm nervous.
This is 22-year-old Tawanda Muchehiwa. He's about to do something he's never done before.
It's my first time to be on an interview.
There is a story the Zimbabwean needs to tell. He says he survived a brutal ordeal and fears for his very existence.
My abductors, my captors told me that they would keep on coming after me, and they say that if I say a word about my abduction, as I'm doing right now, if I tell the world about my ordeal, they were going to come after me, and the next thing I was going to see is my coffin.
The ordeal began on the 30th of July when the university student made a trip to the local hardware shop in the city of Bulawayo. But Muchehiwa and his companions appeared to have been followed by a group of men operating from at least 5 vehicles. And they grabbed him as they waited outside the shop. The incident was recorded on CCTV.
They bundled me up, just like I was a paper, like they just picked me up like I was that light thing. Then they drove for maybe for about 400 meters, 500 meters. Then they said, we are now changing you to another car.
Muchehiwa believes these men are state security agents who've been accused of abducting dozens of government critics over the past few years. The 22-year-old says he doesn't know why he was taken, although he was associated with the opposition MDC party.
These guys, they have a gun. The gun is pointed at me. And one of the guys was sitting on my stomach, and the other one was sitting on my head. Then there's a moment that I started complaining that, I can't breathe. One of the guys, he had to punch me hard and said, "You are not George Floyd, and this is Zimbabwe, not America. And anyways, we don't want you to breathe."
The president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, was elected in 2017 on the promise of reform, but his critics accuse him of ruling like a dictator. Independent journalists like Hopewell Chinono have been arrested after running stories on alleged government corruption. And Muchehiwa says his captors wanted information on his uncle, Mududuzi Matutu. He's the editor of the Zim Live news site and currently in hiding.
They wanted to know about him, and they wanted to know his sources of information. Where does he get information? Where does his newspaper get its funding? Through him, they were saying he had been also recruited to become part of the CIA. It was so ridiculous.
The university student says he was driven to a clearing outside the city. It marked the beginning, he alleges, of 3 days of mental and physical torture.
I got off the car. Then they said, "Kneel down." Then they said, "Kneel down," and one of the guys pointed an AK-47 in my head. Then they said, "Make your last prayer. Say your last words before we kill you."
It's okay, take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. And I accepted my own death. I was really convinced that I was not going to die. Then one of the guys then said, after my long prayer, he then said, "We are not going to kill you now. We must torture you first."
Muchehiwa claims he was strung up on a V-shaped tree and his back and buttocks were flailed with sticks. When he was untied, he says his captors proceeded to sexually humiliate him.
They then did something which I still sometimes not comfortable to talk about. You know, sometimes you are the one who is abused, and at the end of the day, you are the one who have to live with the shame.
He was taken to a farmhouse where the interrogation and the interrogation techniques continued. But he claims a number of his captors wanted to speed things up.
At some point, they received a call. I believe it was from one of their bosses, and they are discussing, and they are saying, oh, Tawanda is only 22 years old. We should get rid of him. Just imagine if he gets to 30, he will give us a lot of problems. So we should just get rid of him now and forever.
This document may have saved the student's life. It's a court order obtained by this human rights lawyer, requiring the Zimbabwean police to find Muchehiwa and present him in court within 72 hours.
As much as we knew that it's been taken by the police and state security agents, they pretended to have no knowledge about it, and we knew that something is not right. They have to be compelled by a high court order to bring back Tawanda Muchehiwa. Unfortunately, they did so.
The 22-year-old says he was loaded into a car and driven back to Bulawayo. When the vehicle was stopped at police checkpoints, Muchehiwa says his captors identified themselves as ferrets, the name of a shadowy police unit that's been implicated in civilian abductions.
When you go to police checkpoints, you think maybe this is where I'm going to get help. But these people, they just say ferrets, and they pass. At some points, they would harass the police, harass the soldiers, and in the road, and you would wonder, who are these people with so much power?
He says they dumped him on the outskirts of the city and issued a series of threats. Tell people what happened or seek treatment at a hospital and we'll kill you. But the 22-year-old didn't have a choice. His body was battered and hospital records show his kidneys were barely functioning.
What happened to me in words, I feel sometimes is doing injustice. The pain was just so intense. And you would just be wishing that it was better if I had died
The issue is clearly sensitive for the Zimbabwean government. This student leader, in red, was beaten and arrested when he held a meeting in support of the 22-year-old student. The authorities did not respond to our inquiries, although they have accused people of faking abductions in return for Western funds in the past.
No, it's not the way that I thought things would go.
Tawanda Muchehiwa has gone into hiding, nursing wounds, both physical and psychological, that he may never recover from. John Sparks, Sky News.